When Beatrice forced her barren daughter Rosalie to marry a Lakota warrior in 1861 Montana Territory, she thought she was saving their failing farm by trading away a worthless child. Months later, when Rosalie returned pregnant and transformed into a respected medicine woman, Beatrice realized her desperate decision had given her daughter something she never could have found in the white world. But what happens when the past and present collide in ways that threaten everything Rosalie has built? The smell of burned porridge filled the tiny cabin as 22-year-old Rosalie Cartwright scraped black chunks from the bottom of their only good pot. Outside, the Montana Territory wind howled like a hungry wolf, rattling the wooden walls her father had built with such hope 3 winters ago. "Another ruined breakfast," her mother Beatrice muttered, not looking up from her mending. The needle moved through torn fabric with sharp, angry jabs. "Just like everything else you touch." Rosalie's hands shook as she set the pot aside. The words cut deeper than any knife because they felt true. In this harsh land of 1861, women were measured by what they could create: babies, meals, comfort for their families. Rosalie had failed at all of it. Her first marriage had ended in shame when no children came after 2 long years. William had sent her home like a broken tool, telling everyone in their Pennsylvania town that she was cursed with an empty womb. The whispers had followed her family west, where they thought they could start fresh. But some failures followed you no matter how far you ran. "The Olsen boy asked about you again yesterday," Beatrice continued, her voice tight with worry. "Lars is a good man with his own land. He doesn't seem to mind about your condition." Rosalie's stomach twisted. Lars was kind enough, but when he looked at her, she felt like a wounded bird he wanted to heal out of pity. His thick hands were always damp with sweat, and he spoke to her like she was a child who needed protecting. "I'm not ready for another marriage, Mama." "Ready?" Beatrice laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. "Child, we can't afford the luxury of being ready. Your father's crops failed again. We've got maybe 2 months of food left, and winter's coming fast." Through the single window, Rosalie could see her father Bartholomew walking slowly from the barn. His shoulders drooped like a man carrying invisible stones. At 50, the frontier had aged him into an old man. The dreams that had brought them west, rich soil, endless opportunity, a chance to build something lasting, had crumbled like dry earth in their hands. A sharp knock on the door made all 3 of them freeze. Visitors were rare out here, and unexpected ones usually brought trouble. Bartholomew opened the door to reveal a tall man with skin bronzed by sun and wind. His dark hair was braided with small feathers, and he wore both buckskin and white man's clothes in a way that somehow looked perfectly natural. Behind him stood 4 other Lakota men on horseback, waiting quietly. "Good morning," the man said in careful English. "I am Chayton of the Minneconjou Lakota. I come to speak of trade." Rosalie found herself staring. She had seen Lakota people before at trading posts, but never this close to their home. There was something about this man that made the cramped cabin feel even smaller, not because he was threatening, but because he seemed to carry the vast sky with him. "What kind of trade?" Bartholomew asked, his hand resting on the rifle by the door but not raising it. Chayton's dark eyes moved past her father to settle on Rosalie. When their gazes met, she felt a strange jolt, like touching a lightning rod during a storm. "My people speak of a white woman who walks among the healing plants with respect," he said, never looking away from her face. "Who knows which roots calm fever and which leaves stop bleeding? Our medicine woman grows very old. We have great need of such wisdom." Rosalie's breath caught. How could he know about her secret walks on the prairie? About the way she sometimes found herself drawn to certain plants, understanding their uses without being taught. "You want my daughter to teach your people about herbs?" Bartholomew's voice was confused. "No," Chayton said simply. "I want your daughter to become one of my people." The silence that followed was so complete that Rosalie could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. "You mean?" Beatrice's voice was barely a whisper. "I offer marriage," Chayton said, addressing Bartholomew but keeping his eyes on Rosalie. 2 strong horses, 20 buffalo robes thick enough to keep your family warm through 3 winters, seeds from our stores that will grow in this difficult soil." Rosalie felt the world spinning around her. In her white world, she was damaged goods, a woman who couldn't fulfill her most basic purpose. But this stranger spoke of her as if she possessed something valuable, something worth trading for. This is madness. Beatrice stepped forward, her face pale with shock. We are Christians. We don't sell our children to savages. Chayton's expression didn't change, but Rosalie saw something flicker in his eyes, not anger, but sadness. Among my people, he said quietly, a woman who can speak with the plant spirits is considered blessed by the Creator. Such gifts are rare and precious. He paused, then added, more precious than the ability to bear children. The words hit Rosalie like a physical blow, not of pain, but of recognition. For the first time in her life, someone was suggesting that her worth might lie in something other than her empty womb. I need time to consider your offer, Bartholomew said carefully. Chayton nodded. I will return when the sun reaches the middle of the sky tomorrow. The choice will be yours to make. He mounted his horse with fluid grace, then looked back at Rosalie one more time. But perhaps it should be hers. As the riders disappeared over the ridge, Rosalie remained by the window, watching the empty horizon and feeling something she had never experienced before, the possibility that she might be worth more than her failures. But was she brave enough to find out? The argument started before dawn and showed no signs of stopping as the sun climbed higher over the Montana prairie. Rosalie sat on the edge of her narrow bed, listening to her parents' voices rise and fall like storm winds beyond the thin curtain that divided their tiny cabin. Have you lost your mind completely, Bartholomew? Beatrice's voice cracked with strain. She's our daughter, not livestock to be bartered away to those people. Those people offered us more than we've seen in 3 years of breaking our backs on this cursed land, her father shot back. And they want her, Beatrice. When's the last time anyone wanted our Rosalie for who she is instead of pitying what she can't do? Rosalie pressed her hands to her chest, feeling her heart hammer against her ribs. The truth in her father's words stung worse than her mother's fear. In the years since they'd arrived in Montana territory, she had become invisible, a burden carried out of duty rather than love. But yesterday, when Chayton had looked at her, she had felt seen in a way that made her soul ache with longing. She pushed through the curtain to find her parents facing each other across their small table like opponents in a battle neither wanted to fight. What if I want to go? The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Both parents turned to stare at her as if she had announced plans to sprout wings and fly to the moon. Rosalie, Beatrice whispered, you can't be serious. Why not? The question hung in the air like smoke from their struggling fire. What future do I have here? Lars Olsen will marry me out of kindness, and I'll spend my life grateful for scraps of affection from a man who settles for damaged goods. Or I'll remain a burden on you until... She gestured toward the nearly empty food barrel in the corner. Bartholomew's face crumpled. You're not a burden, child. I am, Papa, and we all know it. Rosalie surprised herself with the steadiness of her voice. But what if this Chayton sees something in me that we've all missed? What if there's a place where my strange dreams about plants and healing actually matter? For as long as she could remember, Rosalie had experienced vivid dreams about roots and leaves, about which combinations would ease pain and which would bring deadly harm. Her mother had always dismissed these as fanciful nonsense. But walking the prairie these past months, she had begun to recognize plants from her dreams. Those dreams could be from the devil, Beatrice said desperately. Or they could be a gift, Rosalie countered. Chayton called them sacred. The sound of approaching horses cut through their debate. Through the window, they could see Chayton returning as promised, the sun directly overhead. This time he came alone, which somehow made his presence feel even more powerful. Bartholomew opened the door before the man could knock. I have considered your offer, her father said formally. Chayton nodded, but his attention was focused on Rosalie. And what does the woman herself say? The question shocked her parents into silence. In their world, women were rarely asked for their opinions on matters this important. Marriages were arranged between men, with brides expected to accept whatever future was chosen for them. I say, Rosalie took a breath that tasted of sage and possibility. I say yes. Beatrice made a sound like a wounded animal. You don't understand what you're agreeing to. They'll force you to live in those leather tents. You'll eat raw meat and wear animal skins. You'll have to worship their heathen gods and abandon everything you were raised to believe. Chayton spoke quietly. She will live as she chooses, eat what she prefers, keep whatever faith brings her peace. His dark eyes never left Rosalie's face. Among my people, a woman's spirit is her own, and if she can never give you children, Bartholomew asked bluntly. Then she will heal other people's children instead, Chayton replied without hesitation. In my tribe, there are many ways to be a mother. Creating life is only one of them. Rosalie felt tears sting her eyes. This stranger was offering her something she had never dared hope for, value that existed beyond her broken body. I'll need to pack my things, she said. The next hour passed in a blur of frantic activity. Beatrice wept as she folded Rosalie's few dresses into a worn carpet bag. Bartholomew awkwardly pressed his grandfather's Bible into her hands, though she wasn't sure if she would ever open it again. As Chayton helped her onto his spare horse, Beatrice grabbed her daughter's hand. If you change your mind, she whispered fiercely. If they hurt you or force you into anything terrible, you come straight home. Do you hear me? I hear you, Mama. Rosalie squeezed her mother's fingers. But what if I find out I was never meant for the life you planned for me? What if I discover that being broken in your world means being whole in another? As they rode west toward the rolling hills where Chayton's people made their camp, Rosalie turned back once to see her parents standing small and lost beside their failing homestead. Love and guilt twisted in her chest, but beneath those familiar feelings, something new was growing. For the first time in her 22 years, she was riding toward an unknown future instead of accepting whatever scraps of life others thought she deserved. But would courage be enough to survive what waited ahead? The sound of her parents shouting woke Rosalie before dawn. She pressed her ear to the thin cabin wall, listening to words that would change her life forever. You cannot be serious about this, Bartholomew. Her mother's voice cut through the morning air like a knife. Trading our daughter like she's a sack of grain. Rosalie crept to the window and saw her father standing by their horse pen. His shoulders looked heavy, like he was carrying stones. The Montana Territory's sun was just starting to peek over the mountains, painting everything gold and pink. The winter almost killed us, Beatrice, her father said without turning around. Our crops died. Our animals are sick. If we don't find money soon, we'll lose everything we built here. Her mother stepped outside, wrapping her old shawl tight around her shoulders. So, you'd sell our daughter to those people? They're dangerous, Bartholomew. What if they hurt her? What if staying here hurts her more? His voice cracked like dry wood. Look at how she sees herself. Like she's broken because she can't have babies. Maybe with them, she'll find something different. Rosalie's heart started beating fast. They were talking about the Lakota man's offer. The one who wanted to trade horses and buffalo skins for her. The one who said she had special gifts with healing plants. She thought about her small life in this cabin. Every day the same, cooking, cleaning, feeling empty inside. The other women in town whispered about her behind their hands. The barren girl, the one no man wanted to keep. But yesterday, when that Lakota warrior looked at her, she felt something strange. Like he could see parts of her that no one else noticed. Parts that weren't broken. Rosalie made up her mind right then. She got dressed in her only good dress and walked outside. I want to go, she said. Both her parents spun around, their mouths hanging open like barn doors. Rosalie, her mother rushed over. You don't know what you're saying. These people live in animal skins. They don't have real houses or churches. They're not like us. Maybe that's good, Rosalie said quietly. Maybe being different from us is exactly what I need. Her father studied her face with new eyes. You've been thinking about this all night. I've been thinking about it my whole life, Papa. Just didn't know what it was until yesterday. She looked toward the horizon where smoke from the Lakota camp drifted up to the sky. I dream about plants I've never seen. I wake up knowing things about medicine that nobody taught me. What if that warrior is right? What if there's more to me than this place lets me be? Her mother started crying. But what if you hate it there? What if you want to come home? Then I'll come home, Rosalie said, though deep in her heart, she wasn't sure that was true. But Mama, what if I don't? What if I find something there that I can't find here? The three of them stood there as the sun got higher. Birds were singing in the scrub brush. Their old rooster crowed from his pen. Everything looked the same as always, but somehow everything felt different. The man said he'd come back today for an answer. Her father said finally. I know. Rosalie went to her mother and took her rough hands. I love you, Mama, but I can't stay here and slowly turn into dust. I need to see what else is possible. Her mother cried harder. You're all we have, Rosalie. No, Rosalie said gently. You have each other. You have this land. You have hope for next year's crops. I'm just extra. Something that doesn't quite fit. That afternoon, Rosalie packed her few things into her mother's old quilt. A brush that had been her grandmother's. The blue dress she wore to church. Her father's old Bible. Some seeds from their garden that had actually grown. When she heard horses coming, her stomach flipped like a fish on dry land. Chayton rode up with 2 other men. He looked exactly the same as yesterday, but somehow seeing him again made her heart beat differently. Like it was remembering a song it had forgotten. You have decided? He asked, looking at all 3 of them. I have, Rosalie said, stepping forward with her bundle. I want to come with you. Something changed in his face. Surprise, maybe, or relief. You choose this freely? No one forces you? I choose it, she said, and meant every word. Her mother let out a sob. Her father put his arm around his wife's shoulders. Take care of her, Bartholomew said to Chayton. She's special, even if she doesn't know it yet. Chayton nodded seriously. Among my people, we have saying, the strongest roots grow in the deepest soil. Your daughter will find her deep soil with us. As Rosalie climbed onto the horse behind Chayton, she felt scared and excited and sad all at the same time. The cabin where she'd lived for 3 years looked smaller already. Her parents looked older. I'll send word, she called to them as they rode away. I'll let you know I'm safe. But as the distance grew between her and everything she'd ever known, Rosalie wondered if safe was really what she wanted anymore. Maybe what she wanted was something bigger. Something that would let all the hidden parts of herself finally come alive. The prairie stretched out in front of them like a green ocean. Somewhere out there was a new life waiting for her. A life where being different might actually be a gift instead of a curse. The Lakota camp appeared like magic as they rode over a hill. Rosalie gasped. She'd never seen so many tippies in one place, their painted sides bright against the grass. Smoke rose from cooking fires, and she could hear children laughing and dogs barking. Don't be afraid, Chayton said softly. They are curious about you, but they will not hurt you. As they rode into the camp, people came out to stare. Women with long black braids stopped their work. Men looked up from making arrows. Children peeked out from behind their mothers' skirts. Rosalie felt like a strange bird that had landed in the wrong tree. An old woman with silver hair walked up to their horse. Her eyes were sharp as winter stars, and when she looked at Rosalie, it felt like she could see straight through to her bones. This is Winona, Chayton said as he helped Rosalie down. She is our medicine woman. She decides if you really have the gifts I told her about. Winona walked around Rosalie slowly, like she was studying a horse she might buy. She said something in Lakota that sounded like water running over rocks. She says the spirits will tell us the truth about you, Chayton translated. But first, you must show us you can live here. Our ways are not your ways. The first few days were the hardest of Rosalie's life. Everything was different. The food, the language, the way people slept and worked and laughed. She tried to help with cooking, but burned the meat. She tried to carry water, but spilled half of it. The other women watched her with patient eyes, but she felt clumsy as a newborn calf. Then, on the 4th day, everything changed. A little girl named Ayana got sick with a fever that wouldn't break. Her mother cried and rocked her, but the child just got hotter and hotter. Winona tried all her usual medicines, but nothing worked. She might die, Chayton said quietly to Rosalie, as they watched the family suffer. Something deep in Rosalie's chest started pulling, like a fish on a line. She found herself walking toward the sick child before she even decided to move. May I touch her? She asked the mother, not knowing if the woman understood English. The mother looked at Winona, who nodded once. Rosalie knelt down and put her hand on the little girl's burning forehead. Immediately, pictures started flashing in her mind. Plants she'd never seen before, a purple flower that grew near streams, bark from a certain kind of tree. Willow bark, she said suddenly, looking up at Winona. And there's a flower, purple, with heart-shaped leaves. It grows where the ground stays wet. Winona's eyebrows shot up like startled birds. How do you know this? I see it. In my mind. Like someone showing me pictures. The old medicine woman stared at her for a long moment. Then she started giving orders in rapid Lakota. People scattered in different directions. Within an hour, they had gathered the plants Rosalie had described. Working together, she and Winona ground them up and made them into a tea. The little girl drank it, making faces at the bitter taste. By evening, her fever broke. Word spread through the camp like wildfire. The white woman had healing sight. She could see what plants would cure sickness, even plants she'd never touched before. People started looking at Rosalie differently. Not like a strange bird anymore, but like something precious that had been lost and found again. But their peace didn't last long. 5 days later, Lars Olsen rode into camp with 6 other white men, all carrying guns. "We've come for Rosalie Cartwright," he announced in a loud voice that made babies cry. "Her family wants her back." Rosalie's stomach dropped like a stone down a well. She stepped out of Winona's tipi, where she'd been learning to make medicine bundles. "Lars," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, "I chose to be here. My family knows that." "Your family was threatened," Lars said, his face red with anger. "These savages forced your father to give you up. That's not a real choice." "It was real to me," Rosalie said, but her heart was pounding like a drum. Chayton appeared beside her, his hand resting on his knife handle. Around them, other Lakota men started gathering, their faces serious as storm clouds. "The woman chooses," Chayton said in English, speaking directly to Lars. "She is free. She stays or goes as she wishes." "She's been brainwashed," Lars spat. "Rosalie, look around you. These people live like animals. They don't have schools or churches or proper houses. Come home where you belong." The word belong hit Rosalie like a slap. For the first time in her life, she was starting to feel like she might actually belong somewhere. These people valued her gifts. They saw her as important, not broken. "I am home," she said quietly. Lars's face got even redder. "You're a white woman, Rosalie. You can't just decide to become one of them. It's not natural. It's not right." The two groups faced each other across the camp's central fire. Rosalie could feel violence hanging in the air like smoke. One wrong word, one quick movement, and people would die. "Give me until morning," she said quickly. "Let me think about this without guns pointed at everyone." Lars looked like he wanted to argue, but after a long moment, he nodded. "Until sunrise. Then we're taking you home, whether you like it or not." That night, as Rosalie sat by the fire with Winona and the camp elders, she realized her choice would affect more than just her own life. If she stayed, Lars might come back with more men and more guns. If she left, she might never get another chance to discover who she really was. The stars looked different here than they had from her family's cabin window. Bigger somehow, like they had more room to shine. The angry voices outside Chayton's camp grew louder as the sun set behind the mountains. Lars Olsen and his men had been waiting all day with their guns ready, demanding that Rosalie come home with them right now. "We're not leaving without her," Lars shouted across the camp. His face was red with anger, and sweat dripped down his forehead even though the evening air was cool. "That woman belongs with her own people." Rosalie stood beside Chayton, her heart beating so fast she could hear it in her ears. She had never seen Lars this mad before. Back home, he was always quiet and polite when he asked to marry her. Now he looked like a wild animal ready to attack. "Give us until morning," she called out, trying to keep her voice steady. "Let me talk to my people without guns pointed at us." Lars's jaw moved like he was chewing something bitter. After what felt like forever, he nodded. "Fine, but when the sun comes up, you're coming with us. This isn't your home, Rosalie." As the white men rode away to make camp on the hill, Rosalie felt her whole body shake. She had made her choice. But now she realized her choice might start a war between two groups of people she cared about. That night, she sat around the fire with Winona and the other elders. The old medicine woman's hands moved in and out of the firelight as she worked on a beautiful beaded necklace. The color seemed to dance in the flames. "Tell me about your gift," Winona said softly. Her voice was like dried leaves rustling in the wind. "How long have you known plants could speak to you?" Rosalie thought back to when she was a little girl. "I remember touching my mother's garden and knowing which plants were sick. But every time I tried to tell someone, they said I was making things up." "Among your people," Winona continued, "a woman who cannot have babies is seen as broken. But among us, a woman who can heal other people's children is more valuable than all the horses in the world." The words hit Rosalie like warm sunshine after a cold winter. She had spent so many years thinking something was wrong with her body. She never thought about what might be right with her spirit. "But if I stay here," she whispered, "Lars will bring more men. They'll say you stole me. People will get hurt because of me." Chayton had been quiet all evening, but now he spoke. "Then we must show them you chose to be here because you wanted to, not because we forced you." He reached into a leather bag and pulled out something that made Rosalie gasp. It was a necklace made of silver and blue stones, more beautiful than anything she had ever seen. The silver caught the firelight and seemed to glow with its own power. "This belonged to my mother," Chayton said, his voice gentle. "And her mother before that. It has been waiting for the right woman to wear it." Rosalie's hands trembled as she touched the necklace. She understood what he was asking. In his world, when a woman wore a man's family jewelry, it meant they were married. But this was more than just marriage. This was him saying she belonged to his family's story, that she was worth something precious. "What if I can never give you children?" she asked, the old fear rising in her throat like smoke. Chayton smiled, and his whole face seemed to light up. "Then we will take care of other people's children. We will heal them when they are sick and teach them to be strong. They will be ours in every way that matters." When the sun came up the next morning, Lars and his men rode back to the camp. But when they saw Rosalie walk out of Chayton's teepee, wearing the silver necklace and a beautiful dress made of soft leather, Lars's face turned white as snow. "You married him," he said. "It wasn't a question." "I married the life I always wanted," Rosalie said back. "I married a place where people think I'm worth something just the way I am." Lars started yelling then, saying she had been tricked and that she didn't know what she was doing. But Rosalie stood tall and spoke clearly about her choice. She wasn't a scared girl anymore. She was a woman who finally knew her own value. When Lars finally rode away, his last words were like a dark cloud. "This isn't over, Rosalie. More people will come looking for you, and next time they won't be as nice as me." Summer in 1861 was the most beautiful time Rosalie had ever experienced. The Montana Territory seemed to bloom just for her, with flowers she had never seen before, and healing plants that called to her like old friends. Every morning, she woke up knowing exactly what she wanted to do with her day. People from the camp would come to her when they felt sick, and somehow she always knew exactly what would make them better. It was like having a special power that had been sleeping inside her all her life, waiting for the right place to wake up. "You're different now," Winona said one afternoon as they worked together making medicine from tree bark. "The sadness that used to live in your eyes is gone." Rosalie looked at her reflection in a bowl of water. The old woman was right. The face looking back at her was brighter, stronger. Her skin glowed with health, and her eyes sparkled with purpose. But the biggest change was something she didn't notice at first. Chayton saw it before she did. "Hokshiyokopa," he said one evening, using the Lakota word that meant a woman was going to have a baby. "That's impossible," Rosalie whispered. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't impossible at all. Her body felt different in ways she had tried to ignore. Her monthly bleeding had stopped. Food tasted strange. And sometimes in the morning, she felt sick to her stomach. When Winona checked her and confirmed what Chayton suspected, the old woman's face broke into the biggest smile Rosalie had ever seen. "Sometimes," Winona explained, "a woman's body waits for her heart to find the right home before it creates new life. Your womb was never broken. It was just waiting for you to be happy." The news spread through the camp like wildfire. People brought her gifts and congratulations, treating her like she was the most important person in the world. For Rosalie, the baby growing inside her meant more than just becoming a mother. It meant that everything she had believed about herself being worthless was wrong. But with the joy came worry. As her belly began to grow, she thought about her real mother back at the homestead. Beatrice needed to know about her grandchild. More than that, she needed to understand that her daughter hadn't been lost or ruined. She had been found. The decision to visit her family was scary. Rosalie knew that going back to her old world while pregnant with a Lakota man's baby would be dangerous, but she also knew that some bridges needed to be built, even when building them was risky. One night, as she lay beside Chayton listening to his peaceful breathing, she felt the baby move inside her for the first time. It was like a tiny fish swimming in her belly, and it made her laugh with pure happiness. "Did you feel that?" she whispered, taking Chayton's hand and putting it on her stomach. His eyes grew wide when the baby kicked again. "She's strong," he said with wonder in his voice. "How do you know it's a girl?" "Because she moves like her mother with purpose and power." As autumn painted the prairie in colors of gold and red, Rosalie made her choice. She would go home to show her parents that their daughter had not only survived, but had become something amazing. She would prove that sometimes the scariest decisions led to the most beautiful outcomes. But she had no idea that danger was already watching from the hills around their camp, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The sound of crying babies filled the morning air as Rosalie woke up in her warm tipi. But something was wrong. These weren't the happy sounds of healthy children playing. These were the scared, hurt cries that made her jump up fast. October had painted the Montana territory in colors like gold coins and orange pumpkins. But today felt different. Dark clouds were moving in from the east, and Rosalie could smell trouble in the wind. Her baby bump was big now, and Zephyra kicked inside her like she was dancing. "Chayton!" Rosalie called out, but her husband was already running toward the center of camp where people were gathering. Something bad was happening. When she got there, she saw little Running Bear on the ground. His leg was bent in a way that legs should not bend. His mother, Singing Bird, was crying over him while the other women tried to help. "He fell from his pony," Winona explained, her old hand shaking as she looked at the boy's leg. "The bone is broken. I have seen this before. Sometimes the leg never works right again." Rosalie knelt down beside the scared little boy. She had been learning so much about healing from Winona, but this was bigger than anything she had tried before. Running Bear was only 7 years old. If his leg didn't heal right, he might never be able to run or hunt or dance like the other children. "I need strong sticks," she said, trying to remember everything Winona had taught her, "and strips of leather, and the white flowers that grow by the river." But as she worked on Running Bear's leg, she noticed something that made her heart beat fast. Men on horses were watching them from the hill above the camp. Even from far away, she could see the anger in how they sat on their horses. "Lars is back," Chayton said quietly, coming to stand beside her. "And he brought more men this time." Rosalie's hands kept working on the little boy's leg, but her mind was racing. She had been so happy in her new life that she had almost forgotten about the danger that was always waiting. White people like Lars thought that Indians were bad people who stole women and children. They didn't understand that she had chosen to be here. "How many men?" she asked without looking up. 10, maybe 12. Chayton's voice was calm, but she could hear the worry underneath. "They have guns." Running Bear's leg was getting better under her gentle hands. The boy had stopped crying and was looking at her with big, trusting eyes. But Rosalie knew that if fighting started, children like Running Bear could get hurt, or worse. "I have an idea," she said. But before she could explain, a loud voice called out from the edge of camp. "Rosalie Cartwright, we know you're in there." It was Lars, and he sounded very angry. "Come out now, and nobody has to get hurt." The whole camp went quiet except for the wind whistling through the tipis. Even the babies stopped crying. Everyone looked at Rosalie, waiting to see what she would do. She finished wrapping Running Bear's leg and stood up slowly. Her back hurt because the baby was getting heavy, but she tried to stand tall and strong. "Stay here," she told Chayton. "Don't let anyone follow me." "No," he said firmly. "We face this together." But Rosalie was already walking toward the edge of camp. She had learned something important during her months with the Lakota people. Sometimes the best way to protect people you love is to face danger by yourself. As she got closer to Lars and his men, she could see that they were scared too. Their faces were red and sweaty, and their hands were shaking on their guns. These were not brave warriors. These were frightened men who thought they were doing something good. "Hello, Lars," she said calmly when she reached them. "Why did you bring so many friends?" Lars climbed down from his horse, and she could see that he was trying to look tough, but his voice cracked a little when he spoke. "You're coming home with us, Rosalie, right now, and you're bringing that baby too when it comes." "This is my home," she said simply. "No, it's not," Lars shouted, and his horse jumped because of the loud noise. "These people are savages. They've done something to your mind." Rosalie looked at the men behind Lars. Some of them looked uncomfortable, like they weren't sure this was a good idea anymore. Maybe she could use that. "Look at me, Lars," she said. "Really look. Do I look like someone who's been hurt? Do I look scared or sad?" Lars did look at her, and she could see confusion in his eyes. She knew she looked different than she had months ago. Her skin was healthy and brown from the sun. Her hair was long and braided with pretty beads. Her clothes were soft and warm. Most importantly, she was going to have a baby. You're pregnant," he said, and now his voice sounded shocked. "Yes, I am." She put her hands on her belly and smiled. "I'm going to have a baby in the spring. The first baby I've ever been able to have." This was not what Lars had expected to hear. He had come here thinking he would rescue a poor white woman who was being kept prisoner. Instead, he found a woman who looked happier and healthier than she had ever looked before. But you couldn't have children," he said, confused. "That's why your first husband left you." "I couldn't have children in your world," Rosalie said gently, "but I can have children in this world. The difference is love, Lars. Real love, not just duty." Some of the men behind Lars were whispering to each other now. She could tell they were starting to think maybe they had made a mistake coming here. But Lars was getting angry again. "You don't know what real love is. These people have tricked you somehow." "Then why don't you stay for dinner?" Rosalie said, surprising everyone, including herself. "Stay and see how we live. Meet my husband. See how the children play and how the families take care of each other. If you still think I'm being held prisoner after that, then we'll talk again." The suggestion hung in the air like smoke from a fire. Nobody had expected this. The Lakota warriors were ready to fight. The white men were ready to shoot. But nobody was ready for an invitation to dinner. And that's exactly why Rosalie thought it might work. Spring came early to Montana Territory in 1862, bringing with it the most important day of Rosalie's life. But it wasn't just because she was about to have her baby. Word had traveled fast across the territory that the government was sending soldiers to move all the Indian tribes to reservations far away. Families would be torn apart. Children would be taken from their parents and sent to schools where they weren't allowed to speak their own language. Everything Rosalie had come to love was about to disappear forever. "The baby is coming now," Winona said calmly, but Rosalie could see worry in the old woman's eyes. "But the soldiers will be here in 3 days." Rosalie felt another pain shoot through her body. Having a baby was hard work, even when everything was going right. But having a baby when your whole world was falling apart was almost too much to handle. "Where will we go?" she asked between the pains. "North," Chayton said from beside her. "To Canada, where the soldiers cannot follow." But Rosalie knew what that meant. If they ran to Canada, she would never see her parents again. Her baby would grow up never knowing her grandparents. And all the sick people in the territory who needed her healing skills would have no one to help them. The baby decided to come fast, like she was in a hurry to join the world before it changed too much. When Winona placed the tiny girl in Rosalie's arms, everything else stopped mattering for a moment. The little face was perfect, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to already understand important things. "Zephyra," Rosalie whispered, using the name she and Chayton had chosen. "Gentle wind." But their peaceful moment was interrupted by the sound of many horses approaching. Too many horses. "Soldiers?" Chayton asked, reaching for his weapons. "No," Winona said, looking out through the teepee opening. "White people, but not soldiers." Rosalie wrapped Zephyra in a soft blanket and tried to sit up, even though her body was tired from having the baby. Through the opening, she could see a group of people she never expected to see. Her mother Beatrice was there, sitting on the front seat of a wagon. But she wasn't alone. Behind her were families from all the homesteads around the territory. The Mitchells, whose cabin had burned down. The Andersons, who had lost their crops to grasshoppers. The Olsons, including Lars, who looked very uncomfortable. "What are they doing here?" Chayton asked. Before anyone could answer, Beatrice was climbing down from the wagon and walking toward their teepee. She moved slowly, like someone who wasn't sure if she was welcome. "Rosalie?" her mother called out. "May I come in?" "Mama?" Rosalie's voice was full of surprise. "How did you know about the baby?" Beatrice stepped inside the teepee and stopped when she saw her daughter holding the tiny baby. Tears started running down her weathered cheeks. "Word travels fast out here," she said softly, "especially good news." She looked at Zephyra with wonder. "She's beautiful, dear. Just beautiful." "But why are all those people here?" Rosalie asked. Beatrice looked nervous, like she had something important to say but didn't know how to say it. "We came to make them an offer. The soldiers, I mean." "What kind of offer?" "We want to buy this land." All of it. From the government. Beatrice's words came out in a rush. We want to make it a place where your people can stay, where they don't have to go to the reservations. Rosalie stared at her mother like she had grown a second head. You want to what? Listen to me, Beatrice said, sitting down carefully beside her daughter. These past months, watching how your people helped us when we needed it. They shared food when we were hungry. They helped us fix our cabins when the storms came. They taught our children things we never knew about living on this land. She gestured toward the teepee opening where the other families were waiting. We realized we had everything backwards. We thought we were the ones who belonged here and they were the strangers. But they've been taking care of this land for hundreds of years. They know how to make it work. The government will never agree to that, Chayton said quietly. They might, Beatrice said, if enough white families ask for it. If we can show them that white people and Indian people can live together peacefully, that we can all help each other instead of fighting. Rosalie felt hope growing in her chest like a flower opening to the sun, but she also felt scared. What if it doesn't work? What if the soldiers come anyway? Then at least we'll have tried, her mother said. And if we have to fight, we'll fight together. Through the teepee opening, Rosalie could see Lars Olsen talking with some of the Lakota men. He looked different than he had before. Less angry, more curious. Maybe people could change after all. There's something else, Beatrice said quietly. I owe you an apology, Rosalie. I spent so many years thinking you were broken because you couldn't have babies. I never saw all the other gifts you had. I never saw how special you really were. She reached out to touch Zephyrah's tiny hand. But your people saw it right away. They knew you were valuable just as you were. They helped you become the person you were always meant to be. Rosalie felt tears running down her own cheeks now. I was so angry at you for so long, Mama. You had every right to be angry, Beatrice said. I was trying to protect you, but I was really just scared. Scared that if you didn't fit into the box the world wanted to put you in, you'd never be happy. I found my own box, Rosalie said, smiling through her tears. It's much bigger than the old one. Over the next few days, something amazing happened. The white families and the Lakota families started working together in ways no one had ever imagined. They shared skills and stories. The children played together. The women taught each other different ways of cooking and healing. When the soldiers finally arrived, they found something they weren't prepared for. Instead of a group of savage Indians who needed to be moved, they found a community of people, both white and Indian, who had created something new together. The negotiations took weeks. There were a lot of arguments and disagreements. But in the end, the families got what they wanted. The land would stay in the hands of the people who lived there, both white and Indian together. As summer settled over their new community, Rosalie often sat outside her teepee in the evenings, nursing Zephyrah while watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that still took her breath away. Chayton would sit beside her, sometimes playing gentle songs on his flute. Her mother visited almost every day now, learning to braid sweetgrass and teaching Lakota children English words they might need. The old woman who had once been so rigid and frightened had become someone who laughed often and hugged freely. Do you think Zephyrah will have an easier life than we did? Beatrice asked one evening as they watched the little girl sleep. Different challenges, Rosalie said thoughtfully, but she'll grow up knowing that she belongs to two worlds instead of being caught between them. She'll know that being different isn't something to fix. It's something to celebrate. The prairie wind carried their quiet conversation toward a horizon that seemed full of endless possibilities. In the distance, Rosalie could hear children laughing as they played games that mixed both cultures, creating something entirely new. She had learned something that would stay with her forever. Worth wasn't something other people gave you or took away. It was something you found inside yourself when you finally had the courage to be who you really were. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, you found people who helped you remember that you had been valuable all along.